that actually the optimal time for Ghana to have sought help from the IMF was actually in the third quarter of 2021. Our position changed in terms of our understanding of the economy, particularly from the third quarter of 2021. Until then, the figures were not looking that bad. But after the 2020 election, which was also a COVID year, the fiscal vulnerabilities became pronounced and unsettled investors. So in the third quarter of 2021, the Minister of Finance was trying to raise money from the Eurobond market, and the market kicked us out. With that signal, the understanding was that the revenue numbers were not working to projection, and expenditure remained elevated. We felt that that was the clearest signal that Ghana needed external anchor. So we started making the call from the third quarter of 2021 that you need an external anchor in order to preserve your international reserves and also calm investors' anxiety. The reason we felt that was the optimal time was that the IMF was in the process of concluding their Article 4 surveillance or assessment with Ghana. We had clear information that the fund was going to conclude that our debt was sustainable to some extent, but the risk was rising. So we were at a high risk of debt distress as a country. In fact, it was the same position officially Ghana assumed in 2014 when Ghana applied for the 16th IMF program, IMF supported program. The application that was made on the 6th of August 2024, and the program kicked in April 3rd, 2015. What that meant was that your debt more or less was unsustainable, but you had market access. So under the 16th IMF program, it wasn't that difficult for the fund to approve the program because Ghana had market access in closing the funding gap. The delay in reaching out to the IMF from the third quarter of 2021 all the way to 1st July 2022 is what has exacerbated Ghana's challenges, for which reason debt restructuring seemed unavoidable. That's the issue. Now, so when your debt is judged to be unsustainable, in fact, almost twice the level Ghana was supposed to be as a medium debt carrying country, the present value of your debt to GDP ratio should not exceed 55%. And then also the percentage of external debt service to your total revenue should not exceed 18%. There are other debt sustainability indicators, but the IMF decided to focus on two of these debt sustainability indicators, i.e., the present value of your debt to GDP ratio should not be more than 55%, and then the percentage of external debt service to your total revenue should not be more than 18%. In principle, we had breached significantly these two key indicators. That meant that the IMF, their lending framework, will not give you support once you breach this. So the IMF then said that, okay, you are a member country. They moved in quickly. Remember, Ghana made the application on the call on the 1st July 2022. If you look at the speed with which the IMF put a team together and came to this country, it is our understanding that the fund knew that Ghana was going to make the call. And it was a desperate call. It was a distress call. Now, Ghana checked in at the IMF in a very vulnerable state. It's like a patient that arrived in coma. When it happens that way, you have no leverage to negotiate from position of strength. You take everything that is on the table. That was what happened. Thankfully, a staff level agreement was reached in a record time. But they couldn't take the staff level agreement to the fund because the IMF had judged that Ghana's situation was that precarious and that they needed to refinance the program by demanding certain prior actions. Because if the fund had gone ahead to approve the program with those funding gap and other vulnerabilities, there was no way the program was going to work. It could only achieve limited effectiveness. So to that extent, the IMF then provided certain conditions, precedents. We call them prior actions. Those prior actions included utility adjustment. In fact, the fund was asking for up to 60% utility adjustment. The February 1st utility adjustment reached out to about 30%. The difference had to be closed by converting the arrears. How much entities, individuals owed ECG and Ghana Water Company, they were supposed to convert those ones into cash in closing the gap. We've made progress on that level. The other one was the publication of the COVID-19 audit report. Government had indicated they were not going to publish that. The fund made it a prior condition. Eventually, government caved in. That was done. Then there was debt restructuring. The fund knew that the process of debt restructuring is quite a long one. To avoid the Zambia situation, where in their case, they chose to exempt domestic debt in their debt restructuring process, that created a moral hazard. And therefore, Zambia's debt restructuring process stalled. So in the case of Ghana, domestic debt restructuring was the first prior action within the comprehensive debt restructuring program the Ghana government was supposed to submit to the fund. So the domestic debt exchange was done in a very draconian manner. Of course, with the pushback from pensions, even the Bankers Association, individual bondholders, government didn't get exactly what it intended to raise in terms of the fiscal savings from the domestic debt exchange. They had set out to restructure a universe of eligible bonds of 137 billion cedis with exemptions and non-participation and all of that. They ended up restructuring eligible bonds of about 98 billion cedis. Even with that one, some bondholders did not tender the old bonds for the new ones. All right, we made some progress there. We could demonstrate that to the fund as a commitment. Then the process of external debt restructuring is not that easy. The approach government adopted with the restructuring of the domestic debt, that same approach won't work with external creditors. And the external creditors, we look at them from two dimensions: external bilateral and then external commercial. Now, but there are three components. Okay, we have external multilateral, external bilateral, and external commercial. With external multilateral, the IMF, together with the World Bank and then the African Development Bank, essentially led by the IMF, that was advising Ghana to restructure its debt. The IMF and other multilateral institutions had self-exempt their debt. The IMF essentially was saying that restructure your debt. Our debt and other multilateral institutions' debt were not up for restructuring. Now, immediately that was what sent the signal to China that the principle of equity and fairness when it comes to debt restructuring had been breached, and that whilst the fund was exempting its debts, including the World Bank and the others, part of the debt that Ghana owed China, part of them were also from their institutions that they classified to be multilateral. And therefore, China had objected to the framework, the G20 Common Framework. And I'm sure you raised that in your introductory remarks. That was the issue. Then you come to external bilateral. External bilateral, you want to look at the Paris Club creditors, about 22 countries, okay, and then the non-Paris Club creditors. If you look at how much the Paris creditors had given to Ghana, it wasn't that much, okay, roughly about $1.9 billion, all of them put together. Then when it comes to China, one block within the non-Paris Club creditors, they had given almost 1.9 billion. But guess what? The extent of Ghana's funding gap is such that even if the Paris Club creditors choose to cancel their debt, including China, it will not be enough to close the funding gap, given that significant progress having been made with external commercial. Now, hello?
Yes, Prof, we are following.
So, pick 2023 alone. In the 2023 budget, as approved by Parliament, there is a funding gap in dollar terms in excess of $5 billion. That is without adjusting for the fiscal saving from the domestic debt exchange.
Prof,
over $5 billion.
Yes, of which China is holding about 1.9 billion or so.
No, that is just the funding gap. Okay. The funding gap we are talking about here is actually, part of that will come in when it comes to the interest component. But the funding gap here is the difference between government total revenue in the 2023 budget of about 144 billion cedis and government expenditure of about 205 billion cedis. So that difference in dollar terms, using Bank of Ghana's official exchange rate, is over 5 billion. Part of that 5 billion would also include interest payment to our bondholders. That is without adjusting for the fiscal savings from the domestic debt exchange. If you look at how much we owe China and even the Paris Club creditors, the interest rate on these bilateral actually is not the problem. It's not the problem. The problem when it comes to the interest payment has to do with the domestic debt. That had average coupon of about 19.3%, and then the external commercial Euro bonds, okay, that had average interest in dollar terms of more than 7%. That is where the problem is. So really, if you are presented with this situation, you are looking at restructuring, then you want to focus more on the domestic debt, because the domestic debt alone was contributing more than 75% of your interest burden. And then the other component largely from external commercial. External commercial, we are talking about Euro bonds. Now we are looking at something around $14 billion.
Okay.
So these two streams were the problem essentially.
Prof.
All right.
And I think just before we go on, and I think you have laid out the chronology of events where we have come from and where we find ourselves. And just by way of summary, for those who are just joining, you had indicated how we ought to have gone to the fund or reached out for external anchor as far back as third quarter of 2021. So we delayed in doing that. But eventually, somewhere in July of 2022, we reached out, and the IMF was swift to coming because they could tell that, yes, the reach out was about to happen. However, based on the two debt sustainability metrics,
that is the present value of our debt to GDP, as well as the percentage of our debt servicing to our revenue mobilization, we were disqualified. However, Based on whatever plan we presented to them, we obtained or we were able to procure a staff level agreement with the IMF. But for us to get the board level approval, there were conditions precedent. First, we had to do a domestic debt exchange, which is to restructure our domestic debt portfolio. We had to also do an external debt portfolio restructuring, which we are seeking to do now. And also the third element, we had to demonstrate that we were strong on mobilizing domestically revenue to show that yes, we're able to cover the kinds of expenses that we are planning for. So, I mean, the chronology is clear. This week,
we know that the IMF has been in session at the spring meetings. And on the back of all of this, there have been conversations. And what is playing out very strongly now is the power play of sorts. And you had alluded to it between the IMF on one side and China on the other side. We are aware that there were efforts to get China to co-chair on the creditors committee, which they had declined and indicated that they want to do this bilaterally with their respective debtors and on their own terms. We are working against a certain timeline where originally we had been told this IMF deal should be procured by the close of the first quarter, that is March. We are in April. Now we are hearing different dates, May, June. Do you see this posturing on the side of China and what the IMF is frantically doing on behalf of Ghana? And we heard the managing director indicate that she personally is making a lot of efforts to get the external creditors, Paris Club, as well as China, to come on board and provide the necessary kind of debt reprieve to get Ghana onto this program. Do you see us getting this program per the timelines that have been, these review timelines that are being given?
We had anticipated that latest by middle of May or end of May, Ghana should have the program. But I think also that the global geopolitics and geoeconomic fragmentation is playing out in the delay. And on this particular matter, I think that the IMF's approach seems to me that they are majoring on the minor, because the excessive reliance on China's cooperation in Ghana getting IMF program, I think is problematic. Why am I saying so? How much Ghana owes China is not something that will break our back. And the interest component of it is entirely manageable. I'm saying this within the context that if you look at what is happening at the global level with Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the new scrabble for Africa, because every powerful nation wants a portion of Africa. And whoever you owe more or less has your allegiance. And therefore, in the new scramble for Africa, the West, for which the IMF is playing a leading role, feels the only way they could get Africa back is to free up Africa from its indebtedness to China. Remember, just as a slave is a servant to the master, so is a borrower a servant to the lender. We understand that very well in finance.
Yep.
In finance, if you borrow, you have sold yourself or sold the business to the lender. You buy it back if you're able to pay the interest and the principal. So China, in the last 25 years, had sought to more or less have greater control over Africa through trade and debt diplomacy. It's not so different from the approach the West used in colonizing Africa in fact, way back from the bond of 1844, throughout the partitioning of Africa and the exploitation of African resources, which also engineered debt, trade arrangement, trade blocks, Commonwealth, the Francophone, and the rest of them is not so different. Because if you examine the development literature, you will see these powerful countries at one point used Africa as a stepping stone, especially when it comes to market factor conditions, factors of production, cheap labor, cheap raw material, right, and greater access to market, unfettered market.
And Prof,
China knew that.
I mean, Prof, and it's instructive that you say this, because this is really not a matter which is lost on us. And the transatlantic slave trade, I mean, it followed a similar modus where
Yes,
the factors of production were taken from the African soil to work elsewhere to eventually send produce to those various places. But what I'm really hearing you say is whatever delay or whatever hold up right now has nothing really to do with anything that Ghana has to specifically do, but it's really a power play which is beyond Ghana. It's a tussle between the West and, let's say, the emerging East. And when I say the emerging, I'm talking about the BRICS bloc: Brazil,
yeah.
Russia, India, China, South Africa. That bloc, which is why we find ourselves at a stalemate now.
That is key. But also, if you look at, I mentioned earlier about the funding gap, that Ghana could have helped itself in closing the funding gap through some expenditure cut. Remember, the chair of Finance Committee in Parliament had indicated that some level of expenditure cut has to be done. I just mentioned to you that in the 2023 budget alone, the funding gap is over 5 billion. So the point is that the IMF is asking that, and more importantly, given that Ghana has lost market access, if Ghana had market access, this program would have been approved long ago. That would have meant that we could have gone to the Eurobond market and then take some dollars to close the funding gap. But Ghana has lost market access, both from the domestic market, in terms of the medium to the long term, and then the international capital market. And in the 2023 budget, government had indicated that they will close the gap to concessionary funding. So that is why the IMF is asking for that funding assurance that we had indicated in the budget, that we will close that gap, because we had presented a budget with a huge deficit, and you have to indicate how that deficit will be closed. Okay, part of that could be closed from the fiscal savings from your debt restructuring, but you have to demonstrate that the savings from the domestic debt exchange so far and what you hope to gain from the external, at least so far about $1.6 billion put together, and how that helps to close the gap, you have to demonstrate to the fund. And that is why the fund is insisting that they need that assurance, and closing that funding gap will come in the form of debt relief from the external bilateral, as they are asking China to cancel, and as Paris Club creditors are also working towards to cancel. Or it could come in the form of fresh funding. And it's not only this year. Remember, the $5 billion is not only this year. If you see the projection through to 2026, the funding gap is huge. And therefore, there's that commitment that we have to show. And it could not come from us totally, and therefore our external, bilateral, and multilateral. And don't forget that in closing the funding gap, the World Bank and the African Development Bank would also play a role. We know that there is not so much of a problem there, but you can't expect that their funding gap will be closed solely from multilateral and then also Paris Club, because the fear is that if they provide all the funding assurance, it only put Ghana in a good position to pay down on its debt to China. But of course, they wouldn't want that. And China also feels that, look, if they cancel all their debt, and remember, when it comes to the Asians, their philosophy about lending is different from the West. The Asians typically don't forgive debt. They believe that when you borrow, you must pay. Remember when Ghana signed up for HIPIC? HIPIC itself was a form of debt cancellation. The Japanese reacted when Ghana signed up, that the fact that Ghana had signed up had implications for they giving us loans. And for a long time, they had resorted to some level of grant rather, because we had demonstrated that we are not credible enough to pay back on our loans. So the Asians have that philosophy. That's why I said that we needed to understand the geopolitics and geoeconomic fragmentation and philosophical stance of the East and the West and all of that, and in navigating our way through getting the program. And I think that the IMF needs to play a key role. In the absence of China coming on board, we should be asking ourselves, what is the IMF's plan B? Because Ghana is a member country of the IMF. It's the IMF managing director that even told us in 2022 that Ghana will get the program before the end of 2022. It was the IMF managing director.
But
the IMF managing director, with all that she has said, must back it with action. The IMF must have a plan B. What is the plan B for Ghana?
And
because when two elephants are fighting, as we see right now, is the grass, is the vulnerable countries that will struggle and suffer.
Okay, so Prof, on that particular point,
that is lost. Ghana is hanging and living precariously.
Yes. So on that plan B, we are aware that the IMF has designated $23 billion as a plan B to pay off the debts of some of its members so that they can come to a place of debt sustainability, which is one of the options that's on the table right now.
Yes, let's focus on that one. I'm saying that let's not, because this whole agenda is also to paint China as though they are a bad lender on the continent, right? But don't forget that Africa itself has seen a lot. And look, 25 years ago, when Africa needed the West the more, they were organizing, sending off parties for themselves. And China stepped in strongly. If you look at China's footprint in our developmental journey, it may not be so much in Ghana, but if you look at other countries like Zambia, Ethiopia, and the rest of them, you see it hugely. So the West now feels that no, they want their former girlfriend back. But it must be done. That is why China says that they don't want to join that common framework. Okay? They are that powerful now. And they want to negotiate bilaterally because when they stepped in, when the West left, they didn't ask the West to provide any framework. They understand what they are doing. And I can tell you that if you look at the new geoeconomic fragmentation along the BRICS and G7 and the West, it's about time that Africa itself fashions out a strategy in how it engages the West and then also the BRICS in our own developmental path.
Prof, let's look at the issue of China and IMF again. And, you know, and I'm reading from the Daily Graphic of yesterday, and the story by, that will be by Maxwell Akalari Adombila, who is also at the IMF spring meetings, and a portion on China's exposure to Ghana. It says, China, which holds 1.9 billion of Ghana's 5.5 billion bilateral debt, has urged the IMF and the World Bank Group to also restructure their part of Ghana's multilateral debts in the spirit of fairness. According to the IMF, Ghana owed multilateral development institutions up to 8.8 billion as of the end of last year. And then the story of Zambia also comes in. And Zambia has had a stalemate for such a long time, and it has impacted their economy so gravely. Of course, you brought out the difference in the Zambia case because they did not even do a domestic debt restructuring as opposed to what we have done, showing domestic commitment as far as the support that we are seeking is concerned. On the part of IMF, beyond providing that $23 billion plan B, should China keep holding the stance that it is holding, is there something else the IMF can do, specifically with respect to debt owed to it by Ghana, as we are seeking to get to debt sustainability level, as China is calling for?
Yeah, that's why I mentioned earlier that when the IMF that was advising the debt restructuring had set exempt its debt and other multilaterals running to about $8.1 billion. Why the pressure on China and Chinese institutions that they should cancel their debt? You look at it in proportional terms, 1.9 and 8.1. If you are looking at helping these countries, really, as the IMF managing director has been saying, then why are you majoring on the minor? Why are you majoring on the minor?
So, in your thinking, it is more about the multilateral debt as opposed to the bilateral, of which 1.9 is owed to China.
The point is that if you want to help these countries consistent with your own words, a comprehensive debt restructuring, then look, if you are a consultant and they presented Ghana's external debt structure to you, and they ask you to propose measures that will help the country, you are never going to say that China's own should be ranked priority A, and then multilateral, which is 8.1, ranked priority C, or should be exempted. Then you really don't want to solve the problem. You just told me that China's own is just 1.9 billion. Multilateral is 8.1.
In fact, 8.8
external
billion.
Commercial is 14 billion. If you check, the external commercial are actually debt owed to American and European citizens. Is that not so?
That's correct.
So so what is the level of attention in that area? Okay, so you are preserving your institutions. Remember that the China itself is a member of the IMF. Okay, and then the rest of them. But look at the geopolitics and the stand of the IMF, even to the extent that the World Bank president and the IMF have all criticized China sharply in the case of Zambia and other African countries. So to some extent, you get the impression that the IMF and the World Bank are actually singing the songs of the West, even including blaming Russia for their invasion of Ukraine, for everything else that has gone wrong in the world. And remember, China and Russia's alliance and the BRICS is getting stronger. So that is why I'm saying that we need to look beyond the rhetoric and look at it that if we really want to do something fundamental about addressing the vulnerabilities of these low-income developing countries, including Ghana, then we don't need to major on the minor. It may be helpful that the approach you put on the table must be such that it's able to get China on board. And as you said, rightly said, that once they exempt theirs, that in itself created some kind of unfairness, and China can see that. But of course, we also picked signal from Reuters and the others that China was willing to drop down that key demand of IMF and the World Bank also accepting to take a haircut on their debt. I haven't seen the confirmation though. So that's why I'm saying that the world and the way we see things must be fair and we must be consistent. Okay? It's just like the LGBTQ discussion. You don't want polygamy in your country, but you want LGBTQ in other countries. Where is the fairness? Where is the principle? Okay? So the days of old, where you choose and pick which one is right, which one is wrong, because you are powerful. Remember, there are other emerging powerful nations today that are challenging that principle and status quo. Okay, so that is where the discussion is. And I think that we must position it in such a way that the IMF itself recognizes that we can see the geopolitics and geoeconomic fragmentation playing out in how vulnerable states are being treated. And they are rather using this as another form of recolonizing, of the West getting Africa back, whilst China doesn't want to let go. Of course, who will let go? They all know the importance of Africa to them, as a continent, to the global economic outlook and landscape.
And Prof, you know, on the back of all of this, the finance minister has been giving assurances, I mean, on the sidelines of the IMF spring meetings, And he even spoke to the fact that notwithstanding whatever challenges that had been mentioned about China not playing ball, that Ghana has engaged China, and the feedback is very positive at a very bilateral level. Let's just take a listen to what the finance minister had to say in respect of this briefly, and then we'll continue with the conversation.
I mean, we are very optimistic that we will land well and land soon. And so I guess you are asking, what is the definition of soon? How soon is soon? I think one has to be, really cautious about that. Obviously, you have heard Crystalina, Managing Director of the fund, talking with a lot of, sort of a positive air to that. So the real challenge really is that maybe two or three elements. One, Ghana has done what it should do to give all the necessary responses to the fund, including the very difficult debt exchange that we went through. Secondly, now waiting on the Paris Club to submit the assurances. So the sooner that comes, the sooner we will get to go to board, and then for the board to work on that. So that then becomes, sort of the hard facts that we have to deal with. As to what then happens in between, we can't be sure.
And so, Prof, you heard the finance minister indicating that really what Ghana has to do has been done. We've done the domestic debt exchange. We have demonstrated additional revenue mobilization measures. Indeed, through the domestic debt exchange, we have had a lot of cost savings, which were, or expenditure savings, which were initially budgeted for. And also on the part of financing support from AFD and all of those other institutions, those are not in question. What is really outstanding now are the external debts and the reprieve that we are seeking. And he was asked this question specifically: how soon is soon? Quite evasive. Were you surprised?
No, I wasn't surprised. I will give the Minister of Finance the benefit of the doubt, because I don't know exactly Ghana's strategy, okay, in getting this IMF program. And the reason I'm saying so is that once you understand where Ghana finds itself in that vulnerable state, that there isn't a straightforward path in securing IMF program. Our own past and how we have dealt with the IMF should guide us. And given that we had reached their sustainability in the manner we had, requires that we had a strategy. That strategy would inform our understanding of China within the context of the global geopolitics and geoeconomic fragmentation, right? So that when we engage China, we pick the right signal. I'm talking about the right signal. I'm not sure when the Minister of Finance visited China, he picked the right signal. Because right after the visit, the statement issued by the Finance Ministry, really, one wonders whether we picked the right signal. And I'm saying this because it's the communication strategy is as important as what we are seeking to get. And the reason I'm saying so is that if you look at how we have read meaning into those signals in giving assurance that we're going to get a program by the end of March, at some point we're even talking about January and February. When we said that no, the way things were going, probably we could not get it by March, probably middle of May. Well, per our own understanding, we had concluded, and I could be wrong, even before the spring meeting, that most probably middle of May or towards the end of May. I still believe that because the spring meeting was a make or break week for Ghana, okay, but so far, I think we've made some good progress. And I think the finance ministry and the central bank and their team, they've made some good progress because with the formation of the partial committee, like Paris Club creditors and the China also and all of that, we've made some progress. In terms of the framework of understanding, if the parties keep to it and it is not derailed, and here I'm using the words of the chair of Finance Committee of Parliament because his understanding mirrors my position, that these are some common framework we are hoping that all parties will work according to the marking scheme. And if that happens, then we could get that assurance that the IMF is asking for probably by the end of April. We are told that over the weekend or in the next 1 or 2 weeks, it should be possible for us to get that assurance. Once that is secured, the program itself, I suspect, would go through some minor adjustment because the program has approved a staff level agreement has reached December 12. Some of the assumptions will not hold as at now, given what has happened, and therefore minimal adjustment before the board approves the program. So our May deadline, and why the finance minister seems a bit evasive, is that there may be unintended actions that are outside his control, and therefore he could not be so certain anybody would adopt that strategy because you want to look at words and also align that to body language, and so that you get the right signal. Remember that in the diplomatic circle, what is said may not turn out exactly to be what will be done. Okay, and therefore the words, the body language, the philosophy, the history, the global geopolitics, geoeconomic fragmentation, you put in all of that together and you want to be able to give some kind of caveat. But my considered view is that the IMF has a bigger role to play now, and especially looking increasingly to a plan B. Is very important because if you look at where our international reserves is, and more so, if the finance ministers of Ghana has done their part, probably in terms of the global geopolitics, we've done more than we should have even done, because Ghana has openly gone the way of the West. Judge that also from numerous statements from our president. Okay, remember that how Ghana's position in terms of our foreign policy and our role in the global geopolitics, including our voting position at the UN General Assembly with respect to the war, when other African countries actually abstain and all of that, you get the conclusion that Ghana has appealed to Caesar, and to Caesar we must go.
And Prof, indeed, I mean, and it's very clear that, I mean, we are very much aligned with the IMF. Of course, we are a member of it, and it appears the alignment is already showing. But then again, since you are dealing with China, you need to be very cautious so that you don't rub off them wrongly. Yes. At the same time, giving definite assurance or a reasonable assurance to your Ghanaian citizens as well as investors in your economy, so that there's a certain confidence that Ghana is still a place to want to do business. Indeed, we have cited an investors presentation which the finance ministry prepared ahead of this IMF spring meeting. So we'll keep watching. I guess it is safe to say we'll just
I think that
watch and see.
Just a quick one.
Yes.
I think that we are also missing the point here as a country. Between the time Ghana made the application and now, what is it that government is doing to generate confidence in the economy? as we wait for the IMF program. That is where the problem is. And look, when it comes to policy confidence, you can look at the external and then you can look at the internal. Now, from the internal, if government is able to rally the country behind itself, what is it that the government has to do to trigger positive reaction from the economy? Look, here, there are people who have dollars in their account. The ambassador mentioned that. So you see, in as much as you are looking for help, what is it that you are doing yourself to make the help that you are looking from outside fast track? It's very, very important. There are some things you do for the signal effect. Now, look, the creditors and the investors, they are not ignorant of this. Check what the finance minister's response to an interjection that suggested that a second round of domestic debt exchange will happen. Because before the external commercial will commit to forgiveness, you have to demonstrate to them that you have reached your limits in terms of what you could do on your own. That is why the IMF knows that the external commercial debt restructuring is not that easy. So we have to indicate to them, because government didn't get exactly what it wanted from the domestic debt exchange. And that is why, as we speak, there are conversations going on about restructuring the cocoa bill, pensions, and the other things, because you have to demonstrate to them that you have done everything that you needed to do. And you have gotten to the point where they now must come in. That was what Zambia didn't do, and their debt restructuring has stalled after the IMF approved the program, because Zambia chose to exempt domestic debts. Remember that you are asking these people to forgive you $1. You have to demonstrate that you have done everything from your end. And my considered view is that there is considerable room for expenditure-based fiscal adjustment that can help to close the gap, and we'll be helping ourselves. That is where the future is. Okay. It's not in China canceling their debt. How much is 1.9 billion? China could cancel that, and in less than a year, we'll be in that position.
And Prof, I mean, I think your points are very well made and clear, and we want to thank you very much for speaking to us this morning on the forum.
God bless you.
God bless you too. And that's Professor Godfred Bobkin, who is a professor of finance at the University of Ghana Business School, talking to us about the IMF and whether there is indeed hope for we securing this 3 billion IMF enhanced credit facility. And I'll come to my panelists in the studio, and in fact, the full troops have assembled. I have the Deputy General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party, Haruna Mohammed, also Kingsley Amwakwa Buedu, who is a member of the New Patriotic Party. Indeed, I must indicate that he was part of the legal team of Honorable Kennedy Ejapong in that landmark defamatory case that has become a reference point for a lot of students as well as lawyers of the law of tort. Also here is Nick Papo Samoa Ado. The Honorable Chairman Nick Papo Samoa Ado, who is the chairman for the Trobo. Mention
His Grace A in Trobo constituency.
Yes, His Grace A what? Is
branch,
it branch of the Trobo constituency of the National Democratic Congress. And then also lawyer Kwame Jantua, who is a member of the Convention People's Party. You relax. Oh, relax. I'll do my intro. Allow me to do my job. Lawyer Kwame Jantua, His Excellency.
Yes.
Who also joins us.
I'm the chairman of the Political Affairs Committee of the CPP. That's all.
Flag bearer.
I'm not
His Excellency. The proud father as well.
So how can you become an excellency if you are not president? How?
But you are coming. You
Gentlemen,
come with a guard,
Stop
about two guards.
joking with me.
gentlemen,
About 2 police guards with you.
From where?
gentlemen. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us on the forum this morning.
Good morning.
Great. Let me start off with you, Haruna, and to take off from where Professor Bobkin left off. While we wait for this board level approval of the IMF, contingent on all of these other debt restructurings that have to be done, and revenue mobilization measures and all of that. The question he's asking is, what is the government doing domestically to engender confidence amongst the people, amongst investors, that indeed, beyond we being forgiving our debts, we are demonstrating a certain fiscal commitment to not get back there?
Thank you very much. I'll say good morning to cherished listenership, and good morning to my colleagues, especially His Excellency, the incoming flag bearer of the CPP.
Thank you.
And yes,
now
All protocols
have
observed.
you heard anything?
is it Nipaku's kinky issues? You know, we go around his area and they did the jogging, and then the kinky issues comes up.
His Grace
Yeah,
one.
so today he is very fit because the kinky has entered him so much. With respect to what the government is doing with regards to the level of agreement that we have reached with the IMF, I think that first and foremost, government has not stopped doing anything right. We are doing things that we are supposed to do to keep the economy. Government has indicated in our policy documents that we submitted, our economic policy to Parliament, the number of activities that we intend to do, and the kind of expenditure cuts that government has put across. In this particular vein, government hasn't stopped any of the projects. Government hasn't stopped any of the economic indicators that we have put across. All indicators are on track. We have all seen how the GDP growth is going on. We have all seen how Forex is faring. We have all seen how we have.
You're
been
talking
able to
about
manage.
GDP growth. The IMF is saying the projected GDP growth has been revised down to 1.7%.
Exactly, but if you look at what happened even during the COVID era, the IMF has admitted that Ghana is not fit for where we are, because before COVID and what happened in Ukraine, Ghana was far ahead of it. Ghana was far ahead of this. And Ghana is one of the countries that's supposed to be, because this is not where we are supposed to be. And we are there because there is some events, chronology of events that has happened. We all know the deficit in terms of the supply chain management that has affected the entire globe with respect to the stillness in production, companies stopping to produce, job losses that has gone in. And in terms of the demand and supply, we also, everybody wanted to have 100% of what they needed, they had before the COVID sector. So when the economy starts to come back into the system, people wants to have it, but demand would not be able, the supply will not be able to meet the demand, because production levels are picking up and all these economies are picking up. So Ghana is one of the countries that has done very fantastically well when it comes to how we manage the COVID situation, and how we have been able to put in measures to be able to have some kind of production, because we started on something that we should be able to produce some particular supplies within our own country that supported our economic indicators.
No, but I mean, Haruna, I mean, there are all kinds of contestations around how the COVID expenditure was managed, but I don't want us to look so much backward, looking forward, and that's where really the question is. I'm coming. Moving forward, and because that's where we're actually going to. How are we ensuring that? Because issues around expenditure rationalization, you have indicated that the government has not stopped any of its major projects. I mean, the road constructions are still ongoing. I mean, one is happening in my area, the flyover that connects Flower Port to East Legon Boundary Road. It's still going on and all. I mean, people are saying, and a number of economists, no, I'm coming. A number of economists have indicated that when you are at a time in your life where you are struggling to survive, you don't add on things that make you comfortable. You try to survive. You don't think there's reason in shelving certain expenditure, although they may be expansionary in their nature, but in the immediate term, it is hurting you in a way that you may want to consider shelving them or delaying them for subsequent.
But this is obvious. His Excellency the President has made it very clear, and the Finance Minister has committed himself to that in submitting the economic policy to the Ghana's Parliament. This expenditure cuts. The President's salary is cut by 30%, the Vice President, all government appointees, fuel coupons has been slashed by 50%. More of this expenditure, which is indicated in the appendices column of the 2023 budget. I believe that a lot of things has been done, and some of these expenditures has been cut. And some of these capital expenditures, which are very important to the development of the state, has to go on because roads has to, because we need to make sure food is traveled through our various production centers to where we need to consume them. We need to also put in measures in terms of how we be able to have our light on, despite the fact that we are in a very difficult situation and we have the light on. We need to also make sure that salaries and what have you and other consumables get paid. And hospitals, because irrespective of the state for which you are, you get sick, you go to the hospital. And that is why we have not touched in terms of the expenditure aspect for the Agenda 111. These are critical areas that are running on. And those areas that government needs to stop and make sure that there is expenditure cut, government has done exactly so. And that is why the confidence level in Ghana reaching this particular agreement very soon, or as the finance minister has said, how soon will be the soon. But Ghana is on that trajectory to be able to make sure that we're able to reach that particular agreement. We have done a lot, and we will continue to do, because the president has said it. We know how to bring back the economy to life, but we don't know how
to bring lives
back.
Okay.
So these are some of the things that we are looking at.
And you know, Haruna, staying further with you about what the government is doing with the domestic debt exchange, that program that we had to do. I mean, it was all part of we getting onto this IMF program. And there were complaints from some of the individual bondholders and even the Pensioner Bondholders Forum that for the people who did not partake of the domestic debt exchange, they were assured that their coupon payments and all other liabilities due them, as they fell due, they were going to be paid. But there were some delays. And yesterday, for instance, a press release from the Finance Ministry with the title, Government Engages with the Leadership of Coalition of Individual Bondholder Groups and the Pensioner Bondholder Forum. And it says, today, the Ministry of Finance engaged the representatives of the Coalition of Individual Bondholder Groups and the Pensioner Bondholders Forum. Following the meeting, significant progress has been made on the outstanding domestic debt service obligations. The meeting, chaired by the Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Asaase MP, agreed that the Joint Technical Committee constituted on 18 January 2023 reconvenes and agrees on a pathway towards the settlement of the outstanding debt obligations by 28 April 2023. The Ministry of Finance takes this opportunity to thank the Coalition of Individual Bondholders Groups and the Pensioner Bondholders Forum for their forbearance during the domestic debt exchange program and subsequent administrative processes. And this is signed and issued by the Public Relations Unit of the Ministry of Finance. With situations like this, where we are literally, and here it's default of payments giving the originally agreed time, does it not further dampen the confidence that is in the economy?
You see, I'm very happy you said delayed. You haven't mentioned denial. In finance, all these issues comes up in terms of how funding is made available to make sure that some payments are being made. Delays happens, and these are not new things that happens in finance or in management of funds. So I believe that the finance ministry engaging these affected persons is something that is going to yield a lot of good results for all of us. I think that timeline has been given from the statement that you have just read, and I believe that government will stay to that particular timeline and make sure that funds is made available to be paid for the outstanding monies that is left, because outstanding means that some has been paid. Government did not just refuse to pay, but government is making sure that fund is made available to be able to pay and settle all affected persons in terms of the domestic.
Let me go around a bit. Let me come to you, Lawyer Jantua, and you heard the finance minister give certain assurances, and we played his voice. You've also heard Professor Bob King, a number of things he's spoken about, the geopolitical, dynamics and all that is happening within the space. As a citizen, as a private citizen who has lived, worked in this country and has seen the various economic epochs of our nation's growth, where we find ourselves now, is it one that you are confident that we are able to brace through and come out very strongly, given all the external factors that are at play, the interventions of the IMF, the Chinese, and how they are posturing, notwithstanding all the efforts that our government, the Ministry of Finance, the Bank of Ghana, have put in place?
Good morning to our viewers. Good morning to you, and also to my learned friends on the panel. You know, I'm a student of looking back and seeing the history and how that history can lead us forward to do things better. Let me go to Kwame Nkrumah's book on new colonialism. And let me read an intro which fits squarely into what Professor Bopping was saying, and consider when that book was written. And I quote, it says, "The enormous dimensions of finance capital concentrated in a few hands and creating an extremely extensive network of close ties and relationships, which involves not only the small and medium capitalist, but also even the very small. This, on the one hand, and on the other, the bitter struggle against other national state groups of financiers for the partition of the world and the right to rule over other countries. These two factors, taken together, caused a complete conversion of all the possessing classes to the side of imperialism. The signs of the times are a general, inverted commas, beginning and close, enthusiasm regarding its prospects, a passionate defense of imperialism, and every possible camouflage of its real nature." Do you really think that the posturing and the way the IMF is pushing for Ghana to get this IMF loan is only because they love this country?
And that's exactly the question I was asking some time back, that really, we know there's no free lunch. So if IMF is going these great lengths, and we've heard the managing director make all kinds of efforts to ensure that Ghana gets this, is it really out of a certain love for Ghana, or there's something beyond this? What is in it for the IMF?
They still, you see, all around the world, they still recognize Ghana as the first country south of the Sahara to gain independence. And as the first country, they can't afford Ghana to fail. It's not in their interest. Because we, to some degree, have postured more to that side, postured more to the west side. And when you look at what Ghana and Africa has gained from the West, not much.
But beyond the historical relevance of Ghana being the first sub of the Sahara to gain independence, are there no other political and economic benefits to the IMF, which is construed as a representation of the West, that Ghana actually does not fail?
What are the economic benefits? What the kind of restraint and conditions they put on us? Today, don't we have, I'm not sure if it's the World Bank or the IMF, individuals sitting in the Bank of Ghana?
I think that would be it's likely to be from the World Bank.
The World Bank.
It's either the World Bank or the IMF.
Don't we have
the advisor?
Yeah, one sitting in the Bank of Ghana.
Yes.
Don't we have one sitting in the Finance Ministry? What does that tell you? What does that tell you? And really, the 3 billion that we're looking for, that 3 billion, is it for consumption? Is it for investment? No. It's to make sure that we can pay our debts and our interests. And so, for me, you go to that same book, page 13 of that same book. Let me read the quotation. It says, if Africa's multiple resources were used in her own development, they could place her among the modernized continents of the world. But her resources have been and still are being used for the greater development of overseas interest. Africa provided to Britain in 1957 the following proportions of basic materials used in her industries. And it lists
a number of
items, not only to Britain, but to the West. And what does that tell you? Africa is the breadbasket in terms of the development of the world. So you ask the question, we are now independent states in Africa, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
Why can't we come together, especially in situations like this? And if you heard, there was another gentleman who spoke after the MD of the IMF spoke and was talking about the debt that Africa has collected because of the situations happening in the world.
Yeah.
Why is it that African leaders cannot come together, UN, sit and say, this has to stop?
The African Union.
Yes, we've got to be able to have a situation where Africa can look after itself, because we have the wherewithal to do it.
No, but you are also aware that, I mean, we may have Africa Union, but even within the Africa Union, there are certain controls from the West. Say, for instance, the Francophone Africa. There's a certain control from France, which does not really allow for proper economic integration within Africa.
Let me ask the question. When a champion came and says, Yentia, what happened?
But you cannot put up that stance now.
Wait. I'm making a point. When a champion came and says, Yentia, what happened? So if those Francophone countries, together with the Anglophone countries and the other language, foreign language speaking countries, like the Portuguese, the Spanish, say, to hell with the West. We are looking at us, what is good for this continent. Don't you think we can make progress? Look, when we did AFCTFA, what did it do? Didn't it shake Europe? Aren't they trying to get in? Because they realize the economic worth of Africa. They realize it. So why do we sit and feel that the only way we can do anything is to go to the West, is to go to China?
And indeed, I mean, you look at Africa, the population, the demographic. Africa currently has the youngest average age
1.4 billion people.
And in terms of people, we have a huge market.
60% are youth.
Yes.
Then you ask the question, why was it that Malaysia in the 70s decided not to go for IMF, but were able, and this is where Professor Botprin's last comment comes in, were able to say to themselves, we will do this ourselves. This thing, we will do it ourselves. And the first thing they did was to make sure that they cut expenditure to the barest minimum. Cut it to the barest minimum. Looked at some of the major projects, cut it to the barest minimum, and then started from that. Are you saying in Ghana today, and you know, one of the cancers that is stopping us from being able to sit together and bring out a certain type of policy is the partisanship. The partisanship is not helping us to be able to sit and talk. I would have expected, with all this IMF thing going on, I would have expected the president, irrespective of the partisanship, put that aside, because it's Ghana we are talking about.
Yeah.
And we are all sitting around this table are affected. Everybody, be it a supporter of NDC, a supporter of MPP, a supporter of CPP, a supporter of PNC, a supporter of GCPP, we are all affected. And it would have been great if our leadership would look at it in that guise and say, irrespective, hey, come, sit, let's talk. Listen to what Kwampi has been saying. That kind of leadership is what we need now in Ghana. Forget the partisan politics. And I think if President Akufo-Addo decides to go down that route, he would be hailed to leave a good legacy.
And I can see Haruna making some notes. I'm sure he would want to make some remarks with respect to that. But let me take it around to Kingsley. And you hear Mr. Jantua talk about defiance of some of these multilateral parties, and in fact, some of them bilateral. Tunisia, member of IMF, was actually being considered for a program. They have decided, I'm not doing IMF, and I'm not doing any of your restraints or your constraints and any of those, your conditionalities. They are now turning towards BRICS. The BRICS bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now the BRICS bloc combined GDP is in excess of that of the G7 countries of the West. Are you one of the people who would propose that Ghana should go the way that Mr. Jantua is suggesting? We forget about all of these multilateral parties and look within Africa, come together. Or you'll be one who would want to consider changing who we pledge our allegiance to, moving from the IMF to say BRICS like the Tunisians have done?
Thank you, and good morning to Asaase Fosu constituent, Asaase Central constituent.
No, Nick Bakpo, if you want to talk, you need to be behind the mic. Yes.
Well, you see, the Bible says that the borrower is a servant to the lender.
That's correct.
That is emphatic. I think several other religions will say the same thing, probably in different words, and that will always remain. And if you look at our trajectory, our first president did a lot of things. When he at some times he would play the West against the East, and he would get certain things done. And we had the luxury to talk about unifying Africa and all that. Then it is much more difficult than as it was then. Now, that is not to say it is an impossibility. That's not what I'm saying. But the luxury we had then was far greater, because we were just coming out of colonialism, and there was this nationalistic, if you like, breeze blowing everywhere, to the extent that people used to come to Ghana to get what we have and go there and then get a filibuster to go to their countries, and they were successful at doing that. I think the last one was Zimbabwe in 1980, or even I think Namibia beyond 1980.
Subsequently,
yes. So we've done a lot. Okay, the dynamics now are different to the extent that we can't just jump to do what Nkrumah did then. We can't also just be following, if you like, the tide. So the tide is you find yourself in difficulty, go to IMF, and then there's a cyclical situation, and then we really do not make progress. If you listen to all that the professor was saying, we will just be producing raw materials, and we can only develop when we are producing. okay, and turning our raw products into semi-products and finished products,
Adding value.
adding value. Until we get there, we will find ourselves in this cyclical situation. And so I think we definitely have to sit down and to latch on to what Uncle Kwame is saying. We definitely have to sit down and have a deeper conversation as to what to do, because the geopolitics is being played up there. This is a situation where, from what the professor is saying, we've done, and from what our finance minister has said, we've done a lot on our part. And the steps that needs to be taken has to be taken by IMF. And then from what is happening, we're looking at the BRICS, and now we have Saudi Arabia and what's the other country trying to join them.
Indonesia. and the
Indonesia,
others.
yes, and we have this de-dollarization issue coming up. So there's a lot of geopolitics going on, and this is when we are seeking a board approval. Okay.
Yeah.
So in the interim, we need to take this step. Okay.
Yeah.
But remember, MPP is a party that says that we don't even believe in going to IMF. Okay. We don't even believe in going there. We are just pushed to the wall that we need to take this step. And we are saying that this is just only coming to cushion us. Just like Mr. Jantua said, we are not saying that we're going to use this money for production or for investment. No, that's not what we're saying. So definitely deeper considerations are being had. People are sitting down to discuss the long term for the next about 10, 20 years, what must be done. Because we are the same party which said that we are transitioning from the Gadgetsberg kind of economy to an economy that's into production. But that doesn't happen overnight, because you need to build capacity of the people.
And that is one of the
need
main
to-
things that people have leveled up against your party and your government, that you had said you were moving from taxation to production, but now we are finding ourselves having to bear with a lot more taxes than even before.
Yes, because, you see, it is said that Rome was not built in a day. You cannot just wish people, companies into productive state. It takes a long while to build companies, to build corporate entities. We always tout Huawei and companies like that. Check their history. At some moment in time, they were checking history, but they stuck to a plan, all right, and got there through thick and thin, and got there. We find ourselves in this difficult moment, all right, and we are pushing through. We are doing what is necessary to get there, okay? And then we will have a proper discussion devoid of the politics, because, as he said, it's a nation. We are nationalistic to the extent that we are taking decisions, difficult decisions, making difficult decisions at this moment, all right? Going through all the backlash, taking a difficult decision, taking the difficult steps, so that we're able to push through this. This is just a question as to what the structural decisions to be taken, the policies to be arrived at to get us to go forward, so that we transition from the Gadgetsberg economy to the productive one. That's a different level of discussion that must be had.
And so it's we'll call it a work in progress, a country in
Precisely.
transition.
Precisely.
And that this is, and maybe piggybacking on what Haruna said, we had to go this way because of these external factors, what I call the double whammy of COVID and then the Russia,
Exactly.
Ukraine, debacle that we are dealing with. So it is, and we've heard consistently Kristalina Georgieva, the managing director of the IMF, continually making reference to these two
Because she
externalities.
doesn't live in Ghana.
You think so?
She doesn't live in Ghana.
So it's your
A worldly thing.
it's your understanding that she does not understand the Ghana situation.
that could have created a certain percentage of our debt. However,
Not just the debt, but
However-
macroeconomic
however-
environment we find
however-
ourselves in.
However, would we agree that we borrowed excessively? Is that an agreement?
Looking at our debt portfolio, it
Exactly.
is, I don't have to say.
Exactly. Let me finish, Aruna. Exactly. That is the exact position
taking my time.
Just finish.
You
Finish
have
your
not given a
finish.
time.
You finish your reaction in just about a minute.
The excessive borrowing. Borrowing is not bad. Borrowing is not a bad thing if you manage it properly. It's the excessiveness and the recklessness of it.
You think we're reckless? with
Yes,
our borrowing?
I think so.
Okay.
We should have gotten to a point where we should have said to ourselves, hey, hold it. Let's pull back. But just to take a point from what Kingsley said. So what is the plan going forward?
No plan.
What plan have we put down
No plan.
to move forward
No plan.
so that we don't go through this again?
I think with the engagement of the IMF, and that's one.
Put the
I'm coming.
IMF aside.
No,
No,
I'm coming. I'm coming. You see, even gentlemen,
you
gentlemen, let's moderate this.
But remember,
Let's have this moderated. I'm coming.
Posture is
Yes,
very important.
yeah. Kingsley,
So let's assume the right
let's have
posture.
this moderated. Let's have this moderated. Everybody will get a time to talk. And I had indicated already on that. Haruna has put down some notes, and I'll allow him some time to react. Let me come to you, Nick Samoa. You've heard all the conversations, and maybe you may want to take it off from where it is just landing right now. Our debt portfolio
I wanted the context.
is that which requires us to go through this exercise, and we have been successful to a very great extent. I mean, it's actually considered stellar.
What?
The domestic debt exchange program that we have just gone through, although other people think, and you hear someone like Professor Bokwin say it was carried out in a draconian manner. Yes, but we have gone over that.
Have you?
Have we not?
Have you finished with your external creditors?
No.
Sorry, your external creditors.
No, but I had
You
started.
haven't?
No, I started from the domestic. debt exchange arrangement.
Okay.
But the big elephant in the room now is for us to get the external debt restructured and properly. So with the kind of posturing that we are seeing both from the IMF and then China, and let's have this context properly. Ghana's indebtedness to our bilateral party stands at $5.5 billion US dollars, of which $1.9 billion dollars is owed to China. However, Ghana owes the IMF $8.8 billion dollars, which is more than the combined indebtedness to our bilateral bilateral creditors. Do you think the posturing of China, that IMF should also show some true commitment when it comes to indebtedness, is one which is justified?
See, I wanted to even ask you to put this in. Are we having a conversation about how we got here? I think we all know how we got here.
I think that's a conversation that's been had already.
Okay, or are we looking at how our negotiations are going?
Where we are and what the way forward is.
So where we are now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I just wanted, because honestly, I don't think any of us, see, sometimes if my MPP colleagues would be humble enough to admit the fact that we have all erred, you understand? And that being the government, they bear the major responsibility, okay, for where we are. And then open up to suggestions. Because you see, from the opposition's point of view, okay, my biggest difficulty is we have a government going into an economic restructuring program, in my opinion. You understand it? Negotiating a program that probably is going to roll out for the next
maybe I wouldn't say it's an economic restructuring,
no,
because
not restructuring,
more like a recovery program.
Recovery program. Yeah. So at ERP, that the average time of our ERP is like 5 years, sometimes 10 years.
Yeah.
It comes in stages.
Yeah.
ERP 1, ERP 2. This is like a 5-year program, roughly.
I think it's supposed to be like a 3-year program.
3 year, but we all know that looking at what we've heard,
There may be extensions.
there'll be extensions. Is it not a golden opportunity for Ghana, not MPP, not NDC, Ghana, to take a stand on how we have managed our economy and how we want to manage the economy moving forward? Is it not an opportunity for the NDC and the MPP, being the parties with representation in parliament, to come together? Whether it is a bipartisan legislation, we have come out with a legislation on how we give out exemptions Fantastic document.
I mean, the tax exemptions.
Exactly. What about a law that deals with how we borrow? Dealing with what you can borrow for.
Nee, but it only can't be just the two parties.
No, well, yes, I'm saying the Ghana. So I'm looking at a Ghana solution.
If you're talking Ghana, then every stakeholder should be part and parcel of that.
I'm looking at, is this not an opportunity for the MPP government to reset Ghana?
No, but I mean, you're a lawyer. I'm coming. You're a lawyer. You know, even in the Constitution, we cannot take an external debt without the approval of Parliament.
See,
it has representation of both the NPP and NEC.
We have not put in rules and regulations, you understand, on what, you see, we've passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act.
Yeah.
And put a law there that says the Minister of Finance, the Bank of Ghana, Minister of Finance have certain things they can and cannot do.
So we cannot have a budget deficit in excess of 5%.
5%.
But that has been suspended.
That's what I'm saying, that you see, we need to go beyond that and also put in my opinion, a law, okay, by a bipartisan law that will regulate what the government can borrow for. Because we cannot do this to ourselves continuously. It's either we borrow, and every government literally is guilty of this. I'm not making an exception. But the problem is, how do we grow our economy in such a state?
But I mean, about that law, and that's where, don't you think doing that, we may be ending up using law to stifle financial ingenuity?
But the ingenuity that we have given, the discretion that we have given our Harvard, Yale trained ministers.
You can add Cambridge.
At Cambridge. Oxford. And Legon.
Of course.
You know, you see, when Bright Simmons criticized, we had issues. You understand? We had comments. You see, when we give people discretion, you know, in our part of the economy, we end up having issues. Because it is this discretion based on our belief that the Harvard Yale training is going to give us a financial sector experience, blah, blah, blah.
No, but there are still controls. When they do all of that, I'm coming.
Controls is where you are now having a GDP, what do you call it? A budget deficit to GDP ratio of what? Almost over 105%.
Who do you blame? You have a legislature which is supposed to be overseeing that.
See, the thing is this: the business of Parliament is when the executive brings the loan.
Yeah,
you understand. They literally will approve. But if you had the law,
you debate it.
Hold on. What is the debate? What debate do we have in this Parliament? Why we have a law? That's what I'm saying.
So you are saying Parliament is ineffective.
I'm saying that let us take away.
No, is that what you are saying?
So hold on. I'm saying that for me, this negotiation should be an opportunity for a reset. Let us have a national economic dialogue. I've said this.
You want us to go back to Century?
No. You see, listen. You see, it is important for us as a country, if all of us here agree that whether it is Russia, Ukraine, whether it is COVID, we have had, our economy is so fragile, it is susceptible to the knocks and turns of world economic politics.
It is vulnerable.
It's very vulnerable. So why not use this? Let's put all the politics aside and say that, look, for the first time, and you see, I always say that President Nana Addo has a golden opportunity in your second term. You are not standing for an election. You see, so you can be a statesman. You can actually drive through certain legislations and certain policies which are nationalistic in nature and which does not have to be partisan.
However, he has a legacy that he wants to have established.
But the thing is,
to be the first president to hand over to.
No problem. But you see, how is it not better that we depoliticize our economy? Because you and I are always saying that we don't all have the one solution. There's no party with the one perfect blueprint on how to leapfrog our economy into what we want it to be, the South Koreas and the Asian targets that we want.
Yeah.
So why don't we come together and say that, look, we can still have our politics, but when it comes to the economy and economic management, this is the way to go. So we come together, have a national economic dialogue, come out with a blueprint. And for me, some of the key things is how to take away the element of indiscipline in our economic management. So we tell ourselves that, look, if we are going to borrow, we must borrow. It must be either for specific infrastructure or capital intensive, you understand, projects, for example,
Capital
which can
projects.
pay for themselves. So if we are going for a road tax, for example, if you are taxing or we are going for
A road loan.
let it be that I've made some. I said, look, why can't we have a Ghana Commercial Bank, for example? And I'm giving one idea, okay? Be responsible for the tolling of all our major roads. Or we have a consortium of banks. And what we say is that it is only for local contractors. So local contractors are guaranteed that, and I've always said, let's use the model of how we build the George Walker Bush highway. The money is paid directly to the contractor. No middle issues. We all know that corruption is part and parcel of the cost of the road construction that we do in this country.
You are sounding like you listened to the breakfast show yesterday.
No, but I didn't listen to it, but I'm sure whoever was speaking probably shares my ideas.
Yeah.
That you see, there's a way Ghana can be turned around by us, but it is about the will. One, if we want to look at Ghana first and take away the policy, and I've always said that when we did it for the energy sector in terms of fuel pricing, and we took away the politics and went deregularization, are we not benefiting from that policy?
Yeah.
Why can't we do same for our economy? Let's all put the blame game as let's say yes, Kenoforiata and what have you, they contributed part to the problem. NDC by our own legacy debts also contributed. All of us contributed. We've come to the point where we are saying that let's depoliticize our economy for once. Let's come together, pass a law on how we can manage our economy. Come out with strict policies. Put them in legislation. For me, it's important how we borrow, what we borrow for, how we raise taxes, specific taxes for specific. I keep telling people, I feel sad when I drive from Accra to Takoradi, and I'm telling myself, are you saying that Ghanaians don't want to pay for the construction of a dual carriageway to Takoradi and pay even 5 cedis, even pay 5 cedis if you are guaranteed that you are riding on a good road, because it is actually saving your life.
You know, let me do an agama lizard, and this is a message that came through yesterday on the breakfast show. And now that we are talking about roads, and you mentioned the motorway as well, someone comes through and says it is interesting listening to you, and this was yesterday. It's interesting listening to you on the bad state of the motorway. I'll say the motorway is far better than the Yamransa Fosu Highway. Here we drive through manholes. When a government just decides, when a government just decides to implement a no-toll policy overnight on our roads, how do we attract investors to build, operate, and transfer? We must take a holistic view at a problem and come up with the best solutions to better Ghanaians. And yesterday, it's like you were listening to exactly what I was saying. We are complaining about the motorway, and this feeds well into our own campaign here at Asaase Radio. Safe motorway for all. You have a motorway which is about a 19-kilometer stretch.
Yes.
You have contractual issues where you had a tender and it was won by a Portuguese company based in South Africa. Right. But because of certain conditions precedent, contracting has not been completed. It's not gone to Parliament for the necessary approvals. And given that it is an international company, it sits within the frame of an international economic transaction, so you cannot proceed with it. You have Ghanaian companies giving or granted at the time of
this one in the Volta region.
I'm coming.
Excellent.
First guy. There's First Guy. There's Maripoma.
Yes.
There are a number of them.
These are Ghanaian contractors with track record.
This is my simple suggestion, and you have just repeated it. Our local banks, because of this debt restructuring, may have suffered a bit. Because of the financial sector cleanup, may have suffered. So as an individual bank, they may not be able to bankroll. How about having a consortium of banks and then also have a consortium of local contractors?
Yes.
Who will be the ones to execute some of these turnkey projects? All right? We do the financing, we do the execution. If we require 10%. Technical support in terms of execution, the Ghanaian consortium of contractors should decide that, okay, we can engage an external to be a part.
Look at the way we build the Ghana Infection
Let's
Center.
do it.
Let me just add one thing to it. When 2016, 2017, when the MPP came into
Yeah.
power, what did the vice president say? He said, we use paving blocks,
Exactly.
roads. So why don't we have a situation where we say all side roads, paving blocks? Because we have companies in this country that produce paving blocks. Every region,
A good number of them.
give them that contract to do.
Yeah, Haruna.
But if you go to Tabale, there are some places that we have used this pavement.
That's correct.
But,
yes.
but I'm saying
Yes,
it,
I-
it doesn't
I've
have
been
it,
to Tamale.
it doesn't have to be places. All
It has
side
to be-
roads.
yeah.
All side roads.
Haruna,
But
you would have
it depends upon the moisture and the kind of road that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So it can obviously be all roads.
Yeah.
I didn't
But-
say all roads. I
Haruna,
said
you and I
side
will
roads.
agree that Ghana both parties should take this opportunity as a reset to look at depoliticizing our economic management. For me, it's important. Look,
Haruna, do you not agree?
it is
For depoliticization of economic management is something we all welcome.
my second major proposal is about the NDPC.
Wait,
The NDPC.
it's like you look at Article 86.
I
And
don't know
makes
where he went to sleep today.
Yeah, like you see,
that the other time was talking about parliamentarians are doing nationalistic politics and whatnot. This is how you should be talking, and
No,
I'm
but
so glad.
I've always said the same thing here. This is not the first time I've said about the NDPC.
Should be on its own,
NDPC,
independent.
or we should have political representation.
No, and who says there isn't political representation? Who says there isn't? Look at that.
me-
Look at. I'm coming. Look at the Constitution. Look at Article 86, 87. NDPC. Look at its Constitution.
Yes.
What its mandate is. What its members are.
But we haven't.
And you look at
I
that
was
detail.
on the NDPC.
You were there.
It had representation
Yes.
from all political parties.
Yeah, but what is
And a number of appointments from the presidency and a number of technocrats. However, you know the Achilles heel of the current nature of the NDPC in our constitution. Its mandate is advisory, and that's where it ends.
Advisory.
And that's what we must change.
And that's where it ends.
Presidency.
Meanwhile,
That should rather be
meanwhile,
our economic management
Yes.
team.
meanwhile, we have so much de-emphasized economic planning. You
Yes.
remember back then, in the days of
Ministry
President
of
Kufuor,
Finance.
Ministry of Finance and economic planning.
Yeah,
Yes.
economic planning, yes.
Right now, it is more about dealing with the markets,
Yes.
how we're able to secure loans, how we are able to raise taxes.
It's about the
So
philosophy
you know,
of the
I think-
person managing the economy.
well,
Yes. You see, as I said that, let's depoliticize it. For me, I'm hoping that President Nanado, where we are speaking, and I've been emphasizing this, let it be a legacy. You know, he came saying that he's going to change the economy from a Gettysburg economy. It's not too late. He still has a year and some months to go. One of the things he should leave as a legacy is, even if he doesn't achieve all of it, he should take genuine steps to engage the opposition to build a national consensus on how we want to move our economy in the next 20 years.
and I cannot disagree with that. And I just to add that the opposition should also posture in a way that makes it welcoming a thing for the government to invite them
But I
around
think
the
that
table.
President-
I think
I think that President
it's
Mahama-
very important
Yes.
that both sides of the divide see this as a thing about Ghana.
Yes.
And I like the way how this conversation has gone so far. Haruna, let me give you a word. You had a number of points you had jotted. About 5 minutes to wrap up on that.
I think that it's a very nice discussion.
Yeah.
I've heard my senior colleague mention about how we should be able to have both minority and majority discuss matters dispassionately. I believe that if these things are done, that is something that is going to be good. But and the preaching by Nipaku,
The sermon
yes,
around
yes, because I'm very happy he's asked where he slept yesterday and how the sermon is being delivered. But we're in a country that politics has consumed every aspect of our life, which has gone to affect the way economies are being run. You know, when we were talking about the Sino Hydro facility, it had to take the minority to write to the
IMF.
Yes, to write to them, to tell them that this is something that this is a loan that we are going for. Why did they do so? They did so because they wanted to prevent the good aspect of that particular project that is coming to inure to the benefit of the people of Ghana. You look at e-levy. E-levy was a very good concept, but the politicization of how it was made it to become the most aspect that did not even achieve the very purpose.
Are you sure the e-levy was a very good concept?
Yeah, the e-levy was one of the concepts that was supposed to generate revenue for ourselves. And we all know this is a fact that we needed to generate more revenue.
But what was the cost? What was the tax efficiency of the e-levy?
The tax efficiency, I think that everything was being worked out to be able to group to what kind of monies that it is going to bring in.
Do you remember the projection for the e-levy as was done relative to the collections that have been made in respect of same?
Yes, all these things were taken into consideration, but the politics of it made it to become
it was morally wrong.
And
morally wrong.
And I don't know
to eat into someone's savings.
Please. Let Haruna have the floor.
He's a lawyer. There has not been any moral law that says that. There has not been any moral law. He's a lawyer. He's here, another lawyer is laughing.
I'm sure the experts of jurisprudence will not necessarily agree with you. But let's hear you.
I'm not a lawyer, so
let's hear you.
But I think I have three lawyers sitting here, but there has not been any moral law.
Morally wrong.
Yeah, I know.
That you eat into my savings.
No, how? Haruna, let's hear you.
If your savings is supposed to be taxed.
Please.
And I heard about this aspect of these loans and all that we talk about. If we are going to talk about borrowing, I believe that I agree with him that all parties are supposed to be talked to because we all went into it. But he knows very well that under his party, his government, they borrowed more than what we did.
Are we going back there?
Yes, but I just want to put across that particular point because he wants to bring everything to the doorsteps of the.
But he said take it that all of us are part and parcel of the wahala. So why are you bringing that back?
The point is that he made a point that we have borrowed excessively, and you also mentioned.
I made that point.
Yes, we have borrowed excessively, but you have not made the listeners out there to understand that it is not the MPP that has borrowed that much. We know of the non-loan concessionaries that we have to pay on your behalf.
Bringing the politics in Haruna.
And to agree with him, I will suggest to him that if he can speak to the NDC leadership, the Adabraka leadership, because they don't want us to have
letter.
Because a parliament, an independent parliament that wants to make sure that Ghana will achieve, a party sits as Adabraka, rise to them and tell them that don't agree on this number of issues that is going to be done. And he's aware of all those things. So I'm very happy that he's coming to the conclusion that we should all come together and then take away politics in our system. And this NDPC issue, I'm of the view that if NDPC is allowed to work and be given an additional power besides this advisory, because I've worked in the district assembly for a long time, and if you look at how plans are put together from the assembly, it goes down to the community level, where we have the community level plans, we have the area level plans where harmonizations are done. This comes to the assembly, then you put together these plans into a medium-term development plan, which a framework is developed by NDPC. This document is put together to have the national development plan, where we all look at how communities, from community to community, from area to area, how this development is going to be done. Political parties should be made to develop their manifestos in line with the national development plan, so that we will not go out of the framework at which we'll be able to set targets and achieve them as and when these are achieved. I believe that if this is done, from my development perspective, I think that we'll be running on a particular tangent that is going to have a benefit for the entire citizens of Ghana.
I hear what Aruna is saying, and that should be the trajectory, but does it happen?
No, but I mean, what does happen, we know.
Does it happen?
No, but he's calling for what should be. And I think that's where we should be focusing.
Their own party, when I was on the NDPC, went ready to accept the document.
I remember former senior minister
and how many of
saying that, I mean, any plan beyond 5 years, really, I mean, for him, it is become, and with the evolution of time, it becomes unsustainable, a thing to work with.
It's a dynamic document.
Yeah.
Why does Korea have a 20-year plan for energy? Why? And it's a dynamic document. And this 40-year national development plan was to be executed in 10-year slots, being a dynamic document where Parliament had the chance to change things as things change.
Do we know about the Suzhou Industrial Park in China? It's a collaboration between China and I think Singapore also. And it's one of those specialized economic zones. And the plan around it, and this was something sat down, properly thought through by the Chinese people in collaboration with Singapore, and they put together this plan. And so in 5 years, they press and they've modeled it. I mean, an architect has rendered it. You press a button, in 5 years, you see how the place will look like. In 7 years, you press a button, it shows how the place will look like. And they had demarcated exactly where what is going to be. So you as an investor, the blueprint is already there. Yours is to come and demonstrate capacity to be able to execute. You make the investment, we proceed. We don't do, not only don't we do development planning, but we also hardly do spatial planning in this country.
It's all in the 40-year national development plan. The spatial planning angle is depth in that plan. And I say, even if government won't execute it, government is not interested, leave it for the people to read. Let the media take it over. Let the people read and see whether that document can push Ghana forward.
I mean, I have seen the document you're talking about. Professor Nana, I think he's the Sanahine or the Futusantufuhine of the Dentra, who's the prof of NDPC. And he shared those documents, and I've seen the document. I've not read the full thing. Amazing ideas, and it's not just ideas, but a clear plan. You know, a clear plan, and I think the NDPC should be empowered along. Let me give you the final word on this one, so that we can move into the thick politics.
Thank you. I think this part, and I'm encouraged by this part of the conversation, because we all, including my brother Pakwado, has been talking about what is what's a news to the betterment of Ghana as a whole, and we're talking about spatial plan. I think in December or somewhere in 2016, the Spatial Planning Act was passed, and so that is what we use. And you know, when you're executing it, it goes through the process.
Which established the Land Usage and Spatial Planning Act.
Exactly. So the name is Land Use and Spatial Planning Act. So we are getting there. And I think the more we talk about it in a nationalistic way, the better we get. But if we're going to be going back to this said that and this said that, I think it will be problematic. Where I would agree with the former senior minister, Osafo Maafo, is that if we are serious about this National Development Plan being actualized, let us put it in our laws, do you see? Because then you should be able to bind a party that is coming that you have to stick to this. At this moment in time, there's nothing binding them.
It's in the Constitution.
So
I was going there.
Constitution.
That what?
That there would be a national development plan.
Precisely. But we're saying that let's bind the parties.
No.
Yes.
How can it be advisory in the Constitution?
No, but you have said that it's advisory, isn't it? No, I'm saying that let's change those laws to give it a bite. No, we're not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying it exists. Let's change the laws to make sure it is actualized, so that it doesn't become advisory. So that let us bind subsequent parties that are coming to say that when you come, you must operate within the confines, which doesn't exist now. So let's change laws that will make them compelling them to operate within confines of. So, for instance,
and just to set
if-
the context so that you can complete your submission. So, Article 86 of the Constitution,
yes,
which constitutes the NDPC, 86.1 says there shall be a National Development Planning Commission. 2 talks about how it's going to consist. So a chairman who shall be appointed by the president in consultation with the Council of State, the minister responsible for finance, and such other ministers of state as the president may appoint, the government statistician, the governor of the Bank of Ghana, a representative from each region of Ghana appointed by the Regional Coordinating Council of the region, such other persons as may be appointed by the president having regard to their knowledge and experience of the relevant areas and roles pertaining to development, economic and social environment, and spatial planning. And 3, the NDPC shall be responsible to the president. In terms of its mandate, 87, Article 87, the commission shall advise the president on development planning, policy, and strategy. The commission shall, at the request of the president or parliament, or on its own initiative, study and make strategic analysis of the macroeconomic and structural reform options, make proposals for the development, make proposals D, make proposals E, monitor, evaluate, and coordinate development policies, programs, and projects. Then 3.
Political representation, I beg.
No, I'm coming. So there isn't, in terms of its mandate, call, propose,
advice in consultation with.
you know,
You see, so let's make it
but
more
it-
biteable.
But it still doesn't say in here that the president can decide to take it or not take it. It doesn't say
no,
that.
but
Yeah,
if
but
you
yeah,
are
but then,
advising,
I mean,
But we've had-
but
we had
you know,
we've had a legal case on advice.
yes, on
exactly,
advice.
exactly,
Advice
and then you know that
is-
if it's silent, it means that the president cannot.
It's not
bound
compelled.
because it's silent.
Exactly.
If the framers wanted to make it bite, they would have said the president shall or government shall. You see, and so let's begin to look at how we make the laws
So
a
the
bit more
shall in
bite.
here, what does it mean?
Oh
No,
no! Look, read the whole sentence. What I
The
said.
commission
Jusem generis.
shall
What I say.
advise.
So it's
Yeah.
the
Doesn't say
commission
will
So
advise.
the
No,
commission,
No. You can advise as to whether I am compelled to take
take.
the advice. That's
another
that's
matter.
silent. So the commission, we cannot even fault them now because they're doing what they are mandated to do.
Exactly.
But as to the effect, so let's begin to look at the law so that they
The president is
can.
not prepared to change this constitution.
Oh
amend
no,
it.
no! You see,
He's
no,
not.
you see, you're going back to.
These are some of the
you're going
things
back
that-
to if
these are some of the
should,
things that needs to be
could. You
changed.
see, let us discuss in such a way that the
are progressing.
narrative,
Easily.
the narrative. Oh wait,
We are
wait,
dis-
wait.
we are
Let's
discussing
discuss in
it.
such a way that the narrative will catch fire to the
I
extent
understand
that
all that.
it gets
I understand
what
all
we
that.
want
I
to do.
understand all that.
And having said that, let us
and that's to wrap up in 30
yes,
seconds.
let us stop. Once we are saying that we are depoliticizing this matter, let us stop all these politics that if someone comes up with an idea, we already bastardize it before we interrogate it to see whether it's workable or not. E-levy. What was the purpose? The purpose was to stop us from going to IMF.
Yeah.
So we were the ones saying we won't go to IMF. How can a household go and borrow from someone and all that? So we came up with an idea. Bastardized parliamentarians, disappointing us even with their posture in parliament, and all that happened there before it got implemented. After it being implemented, the idea that e-levy is, you see, when we say that you cannot tax savings, I agree with you. What is the purpose? Because when you go to other countries, okay, if you earn beyond a certain limit, your tax is different. If you live in a certain place, your tax is different. And so these are all
We don't have
to,
that here.
yeah, but so these are all so that we achieve a purpose. That was the only thing. It is not to say that because we are a property developing a party where we are saying that develop in freedom and we are center right, we are capitalists. So we actually believe in you realizing yourself.
And
You
so
see,
does it
but-
not come
but-
across
but
as
it-
policy incoherent?
No,
that you rather
because you see,
be the ones
if you're
implementing
going
the
to
pressure
be
like that?
stuck to left, far right, and the hawkish and all that, you are in the 60s.
And it's
We
clear.
are now
I mean, no party in this
2023.
country right now is really
Precisely.
far left or far right.
Far right or
Exactly.
center.
They're all moderate.
Yes.
They're all moderate.
So that when
Liberal.
it gets to a point where we need to switch to this side to achieve a purpose, let us do it smoothly. All right. If the politics will be there, yes, because at the end of the day, we are going to stick to a national development plan, but you still want to maintain your power, you still want to win power. So let's put it in such a way that yes, the politics are there, but we are focusing on a national development.
But Kingsley,
And-
Kingsley, just a minute. Kingsley, would you agree with me? All you said about the e-levy, let's take it at its right. But would you agree with me that the process that was taken to bring it into
Mr.
being...
Jantua, let's not go back to e-levy. I think a lot has been said about e-levy. And the show is The Forum, and we are live on Asaase. In Accra, it is Asaase 99.5. In Kumasi, it is 98.5. In Cape Coast, it's 100.3, and in Tamale, it is 99.7. And we've been talking to Haruna Mohammed, who's the Deputy General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party, Kingsley Amoakwa Boadu, who is also a member of the NPP, Nick Bakpo Samuad, who is a member of the National Democratic Congress, and Kwame Jantua, who is a member of the CPP. We go for a quick commercial break. When we are back, we are moving from the economics to the politics. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
There's a growing number of Ghanaians eager to know why government takes certain decisions. Many more want to know what government is doing with the people's mandate and resources. Ghanaians want to know if we are developing or stagnating as a people. The consolidation of our democracy hinges on transparency and accountability. This is why every weekday, 2 to 4 p.m., I'll be demanding accountability and transparency from the people entrusted with our power. My name is Gordon Asaase, and I'll be hosting Ghana Rising. This is Ghana's first fully fledged syndicated radio talk show, coming soon on your favorite radio station across the country every weekday from 2 to 4 p.m. Ghana Rising. Transparency, accountability, reloaded.
Yɛman no asɛe eduro no ɛyɛ do or die sɛ saa election yi yɛyɛ nea ɛbɛyɛ biara sɛ na ɛbɛyɛ a NPP aban a ɔmo atete apansan yɛ economy a ɔmo ama biribiara asan n'akyi no ɔmo kɔkyerɛ fie na NDC mbɛtoa n'adwuma pa so.
And so that was the former president, John Dramani Mahama, speaking over there. But in a related matter in respect of this, you know, the former president also said we are not going to joke in the upcoming 2024 general elections. That is why I said it is a do or die affair. I made these comments and some people have twisted my words saying I meant we would be butchering and killing people with cutlasses and guns. No, that is not the do or die I meant. Do or die means the elections is a very crucial one for NDC to win. So we'll not joke with it. And it doesn't mean that we'll beat people with sticks and kill them, unquote. And you know, all kinds of things have been said in respect of what the president has said. On the flip side is what the member of parliament for Abetifi, Honorable Brian Echampong, also had to say. And the MPP, having petitioned the police CID to investigate, arrest, and actually prosecute former President Mahama, made a defense in respect of what Honorable Brian Echampong said. And this is a statement issued on April 10, 2023, and which was signed by the General Secretary, Justin Kodiafripo. I just read a few portions of it. And it says the NPP has cited a flippant statement signed by the General Secretary of the opposition NDC on comments made by Brian Echampong, Member of Parliament for Abetifi constituency and MP4 and Minister for Food and Agriculture, while addressing some party supporters in the Eastern region, which the NDC describes as treasonable. The MPP finds the NDC statement not only ill-founded, hypocritical, illogical, and baseless, but also one that lacks contextual substance for the consumption of the discerning Ghanaians who are not oblivious to the modus operandi of the main opposition party in deliberately putting diabolical and mischievous slants to an otherwise innocuous comments, such as the comments made by the Member of Parliament in furtherance of their selfish political interest. This time around, you know, I won't read the entire statement. We have this on the AsaseRadio.com. You can read the full statement. Let me start with the NDC representative here. And there's a statement that the statement by the NDC, we also have that. Let me start with you, Nick Papo. Is it really something that is these petitions to the CID, especially looking at the times we find ourselves in, are they going to be something that are going to actually result in something substantial, or really it is much ado about nothing?
I think that it is a very encouraging sign if both parties believe that the police can investigate and go through the criminal process if somebody has committed an offense. I think it is actually a plus for Ghana that if I believe that my honorable friend on the other side has done something wrong, I don't take a cutlass and a stick and go fight him, but I go to the police station and I make a formal report. I was very happy that the police invited an NDC officer who was in military apparel. And then I saw the national organizer, youth organizer of the MPP, also invited and walked Salam walked to the police station. He availed himself with his lawyer. He wrote a statement. See, that is the rule of law. When there's even-handed approach towards criminal investigation and prosecution. Even in the United States, President Trump is crying that the current government
is being witch-hunted.
So it is important that we are seen as a country of rules and laws. That when I have a disagreement with you, rather than take a stick or confront you openly, I put down on pen and paper my grievance and send it to the appropriate quarters. What the police will do with it, that is a different matter.
Okay, now you are talking procedure in terms of substance.
Yes.
What is making the NDC write to the CID? Do you think it is meritorious
Oh, it
of
is
the attention
important.
of
You
the
see,
CIA?
it is neither for me or you to sit and pronounce on the whether something has merit or doesn't have merit. Where a statement potentially, because we have a situation where lawyer Oliver Bakavomawo is on trial for treason, for making a statement that said that he to literally could not literally quote him that they should that he would mind a coup or something to say the use of the word coup. You understand? And then you have a situation where we are going into 2024. You and I want peace. I have children. I believe a number of my colleagues here all have children. And they would want, all of us would want, we have nowhere to go. Me, my passport is Ghanaian.
You have one wife.
I have only one wife.
I have two. So.
You see? Anything I have of wealth is in Ghana.
No. On that note, good morning, His Excellency.
Yes. Okay. Those who interpret it, yes. I'll leave that for interpretation. Yes. You know,
Ben.
that's a very, very good. That's a very, very good.
Don't join that crowd.
You know,
That mischievous crowd. Don't join it.
It is those of us, ordinary Ghanaians, we want peace and quiet. Whether it is NDC that wins, whether it is MPP that wins, at the end of the day, we want our children to be able to go to school. And we want to be able to go about our normal business. So I think that if any politician, and in this case, Mr. Brane Chambo, you understand, makes a statement which the NDC legal team believes that has the potential to heighten political tension unnecessarily, you understand, we think that it is the only appropriate, instead of going to hold a demonstration to raise tensions or to go and mass up in front of Mr. Brian Champion's house and say we are doing a citizen's arrest, or to, do anything that probably will respond in kind, I think that the appropriate thing is you pen your grievance to the Ghana Police Service. At least, if for nothing at all, call him. Let him come and explain the context and the meaning and scope of his statement.
Okay.
If you think that it is actionable.
Once again, you are going into the procedure, and I think you are very tactfully evading my question. Let me no wait. And I want you to answer it be very forward about it. So the MPP's the transcription of what Brian Champon said is captured in their statement here. It says it was in response to these myriad of reckless and treasonable comments from the NDC that honorable, in fact, let me say that other leading read the previous paragraph and there's a quote that NDC has revolutionary roots, and that when it comes to unleashing violence, nobody can beat us in unleashing violence, unquote. And this is according to John Dramani Mahama. And then it goes ahead to say other leading members of the NDC, including Johnson Esiedun Ketia, the national chairman of the party, have made similar threatening and malicious comments. Indeed, following his election as national chairman, Johnson Esiedun Ketia stated in his victory speech that the NDC would fight the 2024 general elections to win a second independence for Ghana, and that they are prepared to sacrifice everything, including lives, for an NDC victory.
See,
and then I'm coming.
So that
I'm coming. You hold on.
Dennis
No. Let me finish. Let me finish. It was in response to these myriad of reckless and treasonable comments from the NDC that Honorable Brian Champong gave encouragement to supporters of the NPP who may feel intimidated by many threats coming from the NDC that under no circumstance should they feel intimidated, because the NPP has men of courage who can rise to the defense of the democracy and the 1992 Constitution of the Republic as enshrined in Article 3 of the Constitution. Here, I can tell that they are important evidence. Honorable Brian, let me finish this one so that you can respond. Honorable Brian thereupon proceeded to give MPP supporters a firm assurance that their party will not lose the 2024 general elections and hand over to the NDC, but will do everything to retain power, considering the steps being taken by the Akufo-Addo-led government to tackling Ghana's socio-economic challenges, which have begun bearing positive dividends, and also by the conduct of the NPP since the advent of the Fourth Republic. Brian Champon's comment can only be interpreted to mean that the NPP, just as it has done in the past, is determined to do everything legally possible to win the 2024 general elections. The NPP's track record of winning elections through free, fair and transparent means is not in doubt at all. Do you think that this account by the MPP of what Brian Echampon said, first, is what is the case, and two, if that is what is the case, we should be busying ourselves with a petition to the CID?
The quality of this program, it makes it difficult to become a rabble rouser and to, engage in and exchange. We elevate the discourse. Somebody has filed the report to the police. That is the right procedure. You understand?
So you want to stay with the procedure?
No, see, as to the context, because the difficulty is this. If I go into the context of the what the person said or did not say, I'll be forced to try either to justify or not justify sin.
And that is not a problem. It's not before court, so we can go into it.
But you see, it is before the police. You understand? Okay, so let me state what I know as a fact.
Yeah.
I think that any statement, that seeks to raise the temperature of our politics, and increase tensions unnecessarily should be condemned by all.
Do you think this one falls within that?
I think that it does. You see, when President Mahama made the statement that the MPP is using now, makes reference to, that was in immediate response to what happened at Ayawaso Wagon. It was not within the last 1 year or so. They cannot reference a statement by President Mahama within the last post 2020, that is even close to what Brian Echampon said.
No, but devoid of context, a statement, NDC has revolutionary roots.
Good.
That when it comes to unleashing violence, nobody can beat us in unleashing violence.
So on that day, supporters of the NDC had been shot. I don't know whether you've seen that video.
Yes.
That video by that gentleman whose leg was shot.
Yeah.
Up to today,
was in the bucket of a pit.
Yes, his bones. I hope you will see that video. That his recent. There was something to commemorate. I don't know what it was. Whether
the Ayawaso West War.
No, it wasn't the Ayawaso. It was another this thing. And then he was speaking to violence against. I think he's become an ambassador against violence in elections or something.
Okay.
And he was narrating. He still goes for surgical operations. You should see his state. So in the heat of that, the NDC supporters definitely wanted to hear something from their leader. And in that temperature, and in that situation, I clearly cannot sit anywhere and say that what President Mahama said was out of context, because his political party,
it was justified.
Hold on, at the time his political supporters had been maimed in an election.
So if they have been maimed, yours was to let them know that we are capable.
It was a warning.
Of returning the maiming.
This is exactly why I took a certain position from the beginning, that if the political party players have so much trust in our institutions such as the police, for me it's a big plus. That if somebody makes a statement which you find to be offensive in respect of our criminal laws, the correct thing to do is to file a complaint with the police.
Okay.
You understand?
All right.
But to say that, because both of us, there's no way he sitting there will say that what Brian Echampon said was wrong. There's no way I sitting here will say that what my leader, President Mahama, said was wrong. You won't get that from both of us.
There's no way.
But if a court of law or the police prosecute any of our leaders and the court say that what you said was wrong, all of us will take a cue from it and say that, oh, okay, so when you stand on a platform and you say A, B, C, and D, it is not correct. It offends our legal laws. But there's one thing I want to point out, and I think we should be fair. And I think we should be fair to Mr. Asaase Nketia. Dennis Miracles has come out to apologize and retract the statement that has been associated to Mr. Asaase Nketia. It is not true.
Subsequent to this letter.
No, even before this letter.
No.
What he said was that, what Asaase Nketia, and I hope that if you have the opportunity, play that. He said that we have been elected into office as national executive. We will pursue the 2024 elections with, yes, play it, not the doctored one. Play the original one. He says that
I
okay,
represented the MPP at the
but
conference,
you were not there when he gave that speech. That was
was
post
still
there.
there. Yeah, I
Oh
was
well,
there.
that was post the election. I was there. That was post there. Well, fine. He said that they will do everything possible within that, including laying down their own lives. Not, he said, our lives. The key word he said was our lives for victory.
That's the party. That's everybody.
Hold on. He didn't say that
The party
we
has no
were.
life.
Oh, my brother. He says,
No.
if somebody says, I want to lay down my life for my party, and you think that that is equivalent to, I want to kill my colleague in order for me to win power. Those are two different contexts. What you are putting to him or what you are ascribing to him, because of the legal connotations,
the legal ramifications
of repeating a statement that is defamatory and that is not true. So we all need to be careful. Go and get the exact thing that he said. Let me attribute something to him that he has not said.
Let me come to you, Haruna. And you, Haruna, you have a member of your party. I mean, no mean a person, an MP, and also a minister of state.
But
All right.
played
No, let me finish. Say the things that were said, context or not. And just taking a cue from what Nick Papo was saying, the tensions within the country, looking at where now people, and whenever there are economic challenges, it forms a rife environment for people to misbehave. All right. And so being the person he was or he is and what he said, the statement from your boss, you are fully aligned with it, that there was nothing amiss.
Yes. Brian didn't say anything wrong. You see,
you are pretty much justifying what he said, that we won't get you saying anything
I'll
otherwise.
cite that video. That's why I want you to mention, to play that video, because I don't want him to continue on that particular tangent. So if you can play that video.
Now we'll see if production can help us with that. But go ahead and make your point.
Benjamin, the correct one.
Yeah, go ahead and make your point.
It's only one. It's only one. Nobody has doctored any video.
We cannot even talk about
So gentlemen, we have very limited time. So let
your own TV.
No, go ahead. You just make the statement. Go ahead and let Haruna make your submission and let's go ahead.
Okay, easy. I think that Brian Achampong made a very categorical statement, and he premised his statement on a number of factors. Before he said what he said, he had given a chronology of activities that has happened per the performance of the MPP, and has indicated that if not for COVID, that has energized the NDC. The NDC wouldn't have anything to say. And we have the men. That this mantra has been used over and over the time. The Akufo-Addo has used this. We in the leadership of the MPP have used this, because we have always said that we have the men and women that will work to be able to get Ghana out of where it is. And this has continuously been used. Brian said that we have done a lot, and considering the difficulties that we have gotten ourselves in, based on what happened in the COVID and then the Russian-Ukraine matter, we have been able to pick up from the economy. A number of factors, a lot of issues are now coming up. And because of the energy that the NDC had gotten, we have gotten back on track. And on that basis, we would not hand over power to the NDC, because we will win political power based on the performance of the MPP. And we, as a party, in our response to the letter that was issued by the General Secretary of the NDC from Adabraka, we have indicated, as you have read in the letter, the NDC is looking at us as the MPP of yesterday. The MPP that we have today is different from the MPP yesterday. You know that prior to the Fourth Republic, all that has happened, we all know it. And the MPP has moved from one name to the other. And that is why we have named ourselves the New Patriotic Party. We are not.
Let me give you this context so you can respond to it. And we've heard you what you're saying in the NDC's petition, and this is a petition of Abraham Amaliba Esquire, who's the director legal affairs of the NDC. And when you go to paragraph 3, maybe let me start from paragraph 2. It says that your petitioner on the 8th day of April heard in the news and watched videos to his chagrin and disappointment, in which Honorable Brian Champon, Member of Parliament for Abetifi and Minister for Agric and Cocoa Affairs, that's what is captured here.
We don't have
addressed MPP supporters at Ko in Price and told them in a rather exasperating and daring tone that the MPP will never hand over power to the NDC on any platform. And then paragraph 3, that your petitioner says that he said that the said Honorable Brian Echampong continued to say that they, MPP, will show the NDC that the MPP have the men and that the MPP will do everything possible, fair or foul means, to remain in power come what may in the 2024 general elections. I enclose hearing audios and videos of the utterance of the minister, and goes on and on and on and on. And then paragraph 4, this where it is, that in the estimation of your petitioner and those of the general public, the statements uttered by Honorable Brian Echampong could be interpreted to mean that the MPP has conceived a grand scheme to subvert the will of the people of Ghana in the 2024 elections, and any attempt to resist them would be met with violence.
First and foremost, I don't think the petition is addressing Brian Echampong because his position does not include Cocoa Affairs, and they are lawyers. I understand. Maybe it's not to him. It's not referring to him. He's the Minister for Agric. And
are you not majoring on a minor?
No, it's not minor. Title is very important. Okay. Title is very important.
So on the substantive issue they are raising,
yes, the MPP always have the men. That's what I've said from 1992 to date. We have always contributed our quota to the development of Ghana. We have always made sure that we distinct ourselves from the NDC. Look at the kind of policies, social policies that we have implemented. We have demonstrated that we have the men and women. And that is what Brian Champong.
So when he says you have a grand scheme to subvert the will of the people, and any attempts to get you out, if the people will be met with violence from you. What do you have to say?
Because we have decoded their grand scheme. So they think that we have a grand scheme. Because we have decoded their grand scheme. When the former president was talking, he said, do or die. Do is a verb. Die is a verb. They are all action words. Do you get the point? He says it's a do or die. He sought to give some explanation to that particular action words. These are two verbs.
We will not hand over power to the NDC. Constituted in that
because
are action words.
Because we have done A, B, C, D. That will change the minds of the discerning Ghanaian. That will change the minds of the discerning Ghanaian because of the new energy that the NDC have gotten. So we have done A, B, C, D. He mentioned about the fuel prices right from November, which was 23 and 17. Now it is 12. Did he mention that or not? He had given plethora of examples.
So from where you sit, Brian Champong said nothing wrong.
Brian Champong responded to the NDC that we have the men and women.
Specifically,
that
would
change the entire narrative.
Did he say anything that was wrong?
There's nothing wrong.
There was nothing wrong.
He has not said anything wrong. Right. But what I want the NDC to know is that what they have planned, that Lawyer Malba has written in the form of petition, because we have decoded that, they are afraid.
Yes,
okay. We have decoded that they are afraid. Okay. But we in the MPP, we are not going to sit down and allow anybody who has a revolutionary route to misbehave.
Okay.
We will not allow it.
Mr. Jantua, MPP says Brian did not say
also not allow any cook.
NDC also says former President Mahama former President Mahama and Esiedu Ketia said nothing wrong. at least you are not a member of either of them. What's your own perception of these statements that are in respect of which petitions have been written to the CID?
Useless, reckless. I don't understand the equalization that is going on. Whether it's ex-president Mahama, whether it's the current president Akufo-Addo, whether it is Brani Champong, whether it is Asaase Ketia, it's absurd and useless. There are much more important things for us to talk about.
So what's absurd and useless? The statement made by them or the petitions?
Is the statement worthwhile? Is it worthwhile?
So you think
what addition does it bring to Ghana?
But does it take something away from Ghana?
You see, what it does, such statements, what it does, it energizes those who have the intention to create problems.
The radicals.
Yes, energizes them. And when you look at the state of arms in the country today, small arms in the country today, you might say it's political talk. Somebody will say, my party said this, so we can do it. And what happens? That's why I'm saying it's absurd, abysmal, reckless. I don't expect people who have been given positions or who have been in certain positions before to use such statements. I would have preferred Brani Champong to say, if the NDC have these type of intentions, we as an MPP party will go according to the rule of law in this country and make sure the IGP is well resourced to make sure these things don't happen. You say you're a party of peace. So why are you pandering to what the NDC is saying? Why? Why are you pandering to it? Why should you respond in a way that they are responding if you say you're a better party than them?
Then he needs to charge his base as well.
Charge his base for what? Oh boy. Charge his base for what? This is Ghana. We only have one Ghana. And the sad thing about it is that those of us who come on radio platforms and TV platforms and people get to know us and people know that we talk politics. When the mayhem starts in the communities, we will be the first target they'll come to. They don't care. They won't care whether you're CPP, MPP, NDC, all of us will be part and parcel of the mayhem. So isn't it the responsibility of any government, of any opposition, to always preach peace? Isn't it? And then the president is quiet. The president is quiet. The president doesn't say anything about some of these statements that can trigger. Look, when you see a mighty fire, how does it start?
As a little spark.
Little spark. What is the size of a matchstick?
Pretty tiny.
It's not even as big as my little finger. Yeah. But what damage can it cause?
A lot.
Lot of damage. And so the maturity of some of these words that we use should come to the fore. And when you look at the posture, the way the posture that is used to say these things, definitely people can take it as something positive, but it's negative. What do you mean by? What do you mean by? We will do all at all cost to stay in. When somebody like Brani Champong has been indicted in the, what do you call it? A recommendation was given in the Ayawaso West Wogon report that he has to be indicted. And for me, what I heard in terms of we have the men, that got nothing to do with the economic side and the running of the country. We have the men mean that if you bring your violence, which we have the men to counter your violence.
That wasn't what it
does. Does it? That's my interpretation. Your interpretation is different. When you look at the scenario in which he was saying, you can easily come to that. But I just wanted to say,
just to wrap up in 10 seconds.
Time is not on our side. I just want to say, please, 2024, it's an exchange of ideas. Politics is an exchange of ideas. It's got nothing to do with violence. Anybody who wins the election, so far it is fair. It is the country Ghana that is most important. And I would like to say in conclusion, Please. 1992 is what? How many years now? 30?
No, that would be 32.
32.
In fact, 30 years exactly.
30 years now.
We are what? 2023. Hey,
31
years.
31 years
I
now.
see.
If you look at our politics, anytime we're coming into election,
Yeah.
such words fly around. Please, we've got to a point. Once we finish the election, and let's learn lessons from where the country is today. Let's try our possible best to build this nation together as a people, as Ghanaians, to shine in Africa as the light that brought independence to the continent. Let's try. Because this partisan type of politics and this
MYA.
words, MYA.
Kingsley, let me give you the final word. Unfortunately, you have just about 2 minutes to make a submission.
It is unfortunate because all of them have said
Yeah.
a lot. And I believe my senior brother started off with my position, which is that there's a huge storm in a cup of tea. It is nothing. But then he's gone into as if it is still that big. It is something said on a political platform which has foundations. So in law, we say we build a foundation, all right? So we build a foundation of economic issues and said, if after all this, okay, so it's even conditional. But be that as it may, if some people want to just dwell on, start from the middle of the sentence, do you now have to write to the police that they should arrest someone and actually prosecute him for what offense?
But your party is doing same.
Yeah, because you see, as to the politics of it, it's nice, you see.
Is it?
And so, yes, the politics of it is nice. But what wins elections, and we all know, is economic issues. If, and I wonder why NDC is doing what they are doing. They're looking for something, a message. Okay, and so they'll go and touch on this. It doesn't really fly. Then they stop. They come on that. And so now MPP is determining the narrative for NDC. We are in power. You are in opposition. You are trying to unseat. You should rather have some message. So you should have come maybe with, this is our policy. This is what we will do. When we started free education, that was 2012 elections. It got to a point where BBC interviewed His Excellency Nanado on it because it was novel and people, that was what was running.
It's not novel.
You see,
started this in Nkrumah time. Please.
That was what was
Not
running.
This novel thing that you people talk about.
That was
it wasn't novel.
You see,
He was continuing. He was
I only
continuing.
have 2 minutes.
He was
I only
continuing.
have 2 minutes. All right.
He was continuing.
You
Stop
only
this
have
novel thing.
it was
It was
across
novel.
it was across the board. It is nationalistic now. It is not somewhere from the northern parts of Ghana. Anyway, it is because it is successful. That's why you are trying to get it as it is successful.
No,
Anyway,
finish. His mic is off. So just go ahead.
you see, this is what we expect NDC should be doing. Some policy, things like that. Not when someone has said something and then you write. Then we also write. And then that would take the stage. And it, at the end of the day, you see the NDC itself is changing its position. So now they're saying that he must come and explain. It's not now prosecute. Now come and explain. And now the president has also gone out to explain his side. And that is not what wins the elections. It is the economy. So let's all get back. In fact, I'll dwell on this, use your channel to speak to all the other media houses. This is really nothing. What is important for Ghana is economy, the economic issues. How is it going to be solved? We've talked about this national development and things like that so that we can build Ghana. But to say that this one said that and then my interpretation is this, really,
It's much ado about
is
nothing.
much ado about nothing. Let us build Ghana. Or
To indicate that my brother-in-law is being buried today. One of the finest ministers of state, finance.
Yes.
Akotose.
Yes.
Is
Honorable
being buried
Akotose,
today. Yes, and so
Yeah.
it's sad to lose such an astute person. He
Former
was-
minister,
former minister
for planning and monitoring,
Yes.
monitoring and planning.
Well,
and
finance first.
Minister of
before
State for
planning,
Finance, yeah.
Yes, and it's a shame he's gone, but we all go one day, and we
Yeah.
wish the family
And you know,
condolence.
taking cognizance of the fact that we'll all go one day. And to the conversation we just had, let me just read this to wrap it up. And I read from, I'm coming. I read from James chapter 3, from verse 3. It says, when we put bits into the mouth of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder, wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. To the wise, a word is enough.
And it's in the good book.
Yes, and just 10 seconds.
Yes, I think that it's a very good call. This morning, when I was called to come for the program,
Yeah.
I actually would have said that I would have been going for
The funeral.
The funeral.
Yeah.
And I looked at it that several weeks have been called.
Yeah.
Either I'm in the north or
Yeah,
I'm in
you were not-
Central
yeah.
region and all that. From here, I'll be moving straight to the cathedral
Yeah.
at Asylum Down,
Yeah.
where the funeral service
happening.
will be happening
Yeah.
at 1 p.m.
Heading to
The national chairman and the general secretary has instructed all party members and leadership to converge there at 7 a.m. And I believe that the church service, I've just seen pictures of what is happening there. And from here, I'll be moving straight
Okay.
to the venue.
And that's our show. And a very happy birthday to Nanaya Sandra. And this coming from Matilda Asantewa Asare. And she says a very happy birthday to you. And that has been our show. The show is The Forum. We've been live from the Kwaku Shadow Studios here in Cantonment. We'll be live on Asaase 99.5, 98.5, 99.7, and 100.3 in Accra, Kumasi, Tamale, and Cape Coast, respectively. On The Forum, we ask you to stay informed, because to be informed is to be empowered, and to be empowered is to be liberated. Stay with us here on Asaase. We are the voice of our land.